Hi, my name is Jasmine Jones. Welcome to Black Girl, a Therapist in the Wild. Today we will be talking about post-traumatic slave syndrome, epigenetics, and how trauma can be inherited. Stay tuned. Okay, so first let's talk about cortisol, because that plays a large part into how trauma can be inherited. So with cortisol, that is a hormone that is secreted by the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys, somewhere back here where your kidneys are. And basically, it is a hormone that plays a part in the fight, flight, or freeze response when an animal, because human beings are animals, experience danger. So cortisol regulates blood sugar, the immune system, blood pressure, and can be really good for you in small doses. It can give you a burst of energy when you are experiencing trauma. It can regulate your immune system to help heal you a little bit faster. And so yeah, cortisol can be good for you in small doses. It just kind of prepares you for something that is harmful, so that you can get away faster, or that you can fight, that you can have the energy to do those things. Or, sometimes people freeze when they're in danger too, so that's another part. But with all things, too much of a good thing can be bad. So cortisol becomes a problem when you are experiencing prolonged stress. It actually can cause high blood sugar, high blood pressure. It can cause you to store more fat in your body and things like that. So it can cause a lot of issues inside when you go through continuous periods of stress. That's why people with depression have high levels of cortisol. People with PTSD, high levels of cortisol. With this prolonged period of feeling sad or feeling overwhelmed, even if there's nothing happening outside in their environment, having these prolonged periods of just feeling depression, or constantly rethinking about trauma you've experienced, or constantly being on edge because of PTSD and feeling like, you will be traumatized again at any moment. Now we're going to talk about epigenetics and how trauma can be passed down through the generations from parent to parent. A doctor by the name of Rachel Yehuda found that through intergenerational transmission, a parent's genome, DNA, can be changed by prolonged trauma, which can then affect the infant in the womb, who can be born with this change in DNA due to prolonged trauma, having high levels of cortisol in their bloodstream. So the children from parents who have gone through prolonged trauma will be born with having high levels of stress hormone in their bloodstream, meaning that they will be more easily susceptible to conflicts, more easily susceptible to situations that, are stressful. Their reactions to stress might be bigger than those that aren't born with higher levels of cortisol in their bloodstream. They're more reactive. They're more ready to fight or flight or freeze due to conflict. If you think of kids in the classroom, and you have those kids that are loud and aggressive, and and you don't know why or where it's coming from and things like that. So this doctor basically found out that you can translate your trauma, your prolonged trauma. So we're talking about, my other video, we talk about complex PTSD, prolonged trauma over time to your infants. So prolonged stress. And trauma is just basically an inability to function based off a conflict you've experienced in your life. The conflict caused you to not be able to function properly in other areas of your life. So that could be from, I saw this on this phobia show on TLC, and this lady had a phobia of cotton balls. I forgot what triggered it, but she had a phobia of cotton balls. And, that was traumatizing for her. Every time she saw a cotton ball, she would just freak out. So having those phobias, having those traumas, no matter what it is, it still affects the frontal lobe, still affects the cortisol that's running through your body. If you can't handle it, then it will traumatize you. Now, it doesn't have to develop into PTSD. Like this lady had a phobia. She didn't necessarily have PTSD, the nightmares, the flashbacks, the angry outbursts, the anxiety, depression. She just had a phobia when she saw cotton balls. But that's what I'm saying. Trauma can translate into almost any mental health issue, either in the moment or later on in the future. So prolonged trauma, on the other hand, is something that you've experienced every day. It could be societal racism. It could be relationship trauma, abuse. It could be being tortured. It could be being in prison, pregnant women in prison, things like that. Prolonged stress, prolonged trauma, things that make you unable to function in other areas of your life, can cause your child to be born with, high levels and high susceptibility to stress. So this doctor figured that out. Now, Joy DeGruy, before the doctors even figured that out, wrote a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. I met her. She's an amazing person. I wish I could meet her again. But yeah, she's an amazing person. And she basically postulated that a lot of the issues that African Americans experience may stem from slavery, segregation period, societal racism. It's just kind of discussing how during slavery we were seen as the lesser people. We weren't seen as people. We were seen as chattel, as animals and things like that. And there was a large amount of cognitive dissonance in the majority society, in white society, with the Constitution, all men will be created equal and things like that, but we weren't seen as equal. And then if you look at how we're treated today, when we're killed by police officers, and it's not made that big of a deal. I mean, we had a whole Super Bowl, and yeah, people protested, but some people still didn't. And it was like, normalized. I see a lot of people online normalizing, like, well, no one else is protesting, so why should we? Everyone else is giving up, so why should we? And it just feels like, okay, that's understandable, but then people still die. Lives still matter, right? Black lives still matter, don't they? I mean, it's kind of like in our mind to just dismiss ourselves as a people. And it was taught to us during slavery. We aren't people, so we continue to not see ourselves as people. They didn't see us as people, so we don't see ourselves as people. And, that is something that Joy DeGruy talks about in her book is, that cognitive dissonance and how it has traveled with us throughout time. That we have internalized our own trauma to the point, and this was before they even came out with the science for it. We have internalized our own trauma from slavery to the point that we don't even see ourselves. And so that's why I'm so happy the science can back up what she's saying, that, we are going through a period for 400 or 500 years of prolonged trauma that we have not healed from because we continue to repeat it ourselves. So understanding that will help us get through the trauma that we're experiencing on a daily basis. Notice when your child is having issues. Notice when you're having issues and process where those issues are coming from. The light skin, dark skin issues, we pass that down. The, good hair, bad hair, we pass that down. The self-hatred, the needing to have bigger butts and curviness in our community and things like that. The looking down on ourselves, the, sexual abuse, the drug addictions and things like that can all be passed through experiences from our ancestors and how we've been treated over the years. So, she figured this out. You know, it was more of a nature, what is it, nurture? It was more of a nurture case with her book. I think she added the epigenetics part to her book later on when the science confirmed it, basically. But her theory was more of a nurture theory, where we learn this from watching the people around us, from watching our parents and how they cope with conflicts in their life, how they deal with things that they don't like, how they deal with, you know, just various crises and issues in their life. So when she first wrote it, it was more so a nurture issue. We watched, we learned. The science shows that it's a nature issue. We are born this way sometimes, and then we can be nurtured in our environment to stay this way. So it's almost like the science is coming together, you know, the observable science, the biological science is coming together to say that it could be both nature and nurture that causes a lot of issues in different communities. You know, a lot of studies on epigenetics have been done on Native Americans and the stressors and the conflicts that have went on with them, war-torn immigrants that come to America, Syrians and Palestinians and people from Iraq and things like that, and people from South America that come to the USA, and how immigration and being pregnant while going through the immigration process, and just it's a lot. So those things are traumatic for the mother, which will also be traumatic for the child. So, you know, cortisol, what I said in the beginning, plays a big part in all of this, because this is what's causing the children to be born into this kind of high stress situation. They're born high stress, and then their environment nurtures that high stress a lot of the times, instead of, you know, helping the child and reflecting with the child on their emotions and understanding what's going on with the child. Their environment will be very high stress. So how can we fix this? So it is proven that it can be reversed. The child doesn't have to stay high stress, high level of cortisol in the bloodstream. They don't have to stay that way. But the nurture part has to come in. The parent, the caregivers to the child, has to see that there's an issue, has to get that child help for that. It can be therapy, parental reflection, helping that child find words for their emotions when they get upset so that they can express how they feel. The community that they're in, making sure the child is around positive individuals that can help guide them through, you know, stressful moments, because it's not the stress, the emotions aren't going to go away. It's relearning how to deal with the emotions. So that's the major issue, is that these emotions that are ready to just be pushed over the edge over any little thing, they're not necessarily a bad thing. It's more so that they're just easily triggered. We don't get rid of our emotions. That's not what therapy is for. We learn how to deal with them so that we don't become so easily triggered by things. And that's how you reverse it in childhood. The nurturing, when your baby's crying, making sure that you're comforting your baby on a regular basis. You know, you have those babies that, you know, they don't have colic or anything, but they just scream and cry and they're hysterical all the time. And then, you know, the parents get overwhelmed. If you feel overwhelmed by your child and you feel like you don't know what to do, get help for yourself so that you can nurture this child in a positive way. Making sure that you get the right therapeutic services for yourself. Making sure that you are taking time to self-care when you feel overwhelmed, because the goal is not to get rid of the emotions. The goal is to express our emotions in a better way. Like, I get mad easily, so instead of socking a wall, I'm going to go for a walk. as an adult, of course, I'm going to go for a walk. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to be a little bit calmer. And then that's how we model for our child. The nurturing part of that situation is how we model for our child. Like, our child sees us when we get overwhelmed, and then they're like, oh, mommy or daddy goes for walks when they're upset. So that means that when I'm upset, I can, just go kind of by myself and chill out for a little bit. Depending on the age of the child might be able to be old enough to go for a walk themselves for a little bit. Maybe like if they're 13 or 14 or something. But as a young child, learning that maybe sometimes I need to go by myself, because I saw mommy and daddy go by themselves and calm down, and then they came back out and they were happy. It's the things that the child sees that leads the adult to happiness, that makes the child want to follow the adult and say, hey, you do that when you're upset, so I'm going to do that when I'm upset, so that I can calm down too and be happy too. So yeah, these things can be reversed. We don't have to stay this way forever. We don't have to be aggressive and combative and not know why. Understand yourself. Read. Research. Post-traumatic stress syndrome. Epigenetics. Transgenerational trauma. Understand those concepts. And I guess I'll ask another question, even though no one's been answering my questions or watching my videos, but that's okay. I'm still going to do them because I find them cathartic. So I'm just going to do them because they're cathartic for me. So I don't really care that much what other people think at this point. But do you notice anything that you do when handling conflict that mirrors something that your caregivers did when you were younger? Whether it's a healthy way of dealing with conflict or it's a challenging way of dealing with conflict that causes you problems. So yeah, that's it for this video. Peace.